in the waiting room right away. If everyone can be sure that they remain muted, we'd love for you to use the chat feature to ask any questions. And then Betsy, you're all set to record this as well, correct? Perfect. All right, well, thank you all for joining us today. My name is John Gacka, president of DMI Hotels, and I'd like to introduce our guests of our panel. I have Michael Toney, who is the vice president of hotel sales at the Golden Nugget Las Vegas. Stephanie Walker, director of sales of the Lodge at Torrey Pines in La Jolla, San Diego, California. Stacy Seaborn, who is the director of sales and marketing at Hotel Valencia in San Antonio, Texas. And Robin Prakash, director of sales of PGA National Resort in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. And Steve Garvey with the Garvey Group, who is a expert in risk consulting and hospitality insurance evaluation. Does that sound right, Steve? Steve?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So Steve, we've talked about this before, but some of the process of what's going on right now, you've been integral in helping write some of the blueprints for a few of the major chains, as well as a bunch of management companies. So thanks for joining us today. We've kind of asked you to join to oversee and give us some nod shakes and tell us if we're doing things right and tell us if we should be doing things different. Ultimately, the goal of the call is, I think we all kind of sit in our world, and we may read something, we may see something, and we don't really know, what to believe or what's actually happening. So what we've asked for of our hotels from San Antonio, San Diego, Las Vegas, and South Florida to join us to kind of give us a story of what's actually happening. Some of these hotels have actually had groups happen. Some of these groups have been open the entire time. Michael in Las Vegas, obviously, state mandated closure, but now they're back opening and up and running. So we want to talk a little bit about what things are looking like. We would love for you all to use the chat feature. And if you have specific questions that you'd like answered, please just put them in the chat, and I'll do my absolute best to make sure that we address them. So thank you all for joining us today. Why don't we start with Michael Toney? Michael, you're the newest to kind of get back in the game here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Las Vegas, and if I was walking down the street, kind of what I'd see, or how things look internally, and kind of how the hotel's functioning.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. And John and Betsy and crew, thanks for putting this together. DMI is a great organization. We love working with you guys. Las Vegas, actually, due to government mandate, was closed in mid-March. We recently reopened the first week of June. Most of the hotels, casinos are reopened at this point. Obviously, there was a big ramp-up period, but I'd say approximately 50% of the restaurants and the casinos are open right now. The majority of the pools are open, and Las Vegas has taken social distancing and the whole pandemic very seriously. So just last night, our governor came out and mandated face masks for everyone in a public or a private area, for that matter, in Las Vegas to wear a face mask. So when you walk through the casino starting tonight at 11:59 p.m., everyone will have a face mask on. But again, Las Vegas has taken this very seriously from a social distancing standpoint, and all the health and guidelines put out by the COC we are adhering to at this point.
Hey, Stephanie, over at the Lodge in San Diego, obviously you guys have gone through a recent transition as well. Fill us in on kind of where you were maybe a week ago and where you are now. And since you're part of Evans Hotels and you actually have 3 different hotels in the market, I believe all 3 have stayed open the entire time, correct?
That's exactly right. Yeah, the Lodge at Torrey Pines, Catamaran Resort, and Bahia have all stayed open. The way we were able to stay open in San Diego was that we provided accommodations for essential workers. We have a lot of healthcare companies in our little community here, UCSD, Scripps, Sharp, and we were able to provide accommodations for those healthcare workers. With that, we've been able to really go through a lot of training and development with our employees to make sure that we are ready for, things opening up. Our restaurants opened up about 2 weeks ago. So both of our restaurants are currently open, and then our spa is opening up on Wednesday of next week. So team's fully, ready. We've got a group, one of our groups coming in first part of August, which we're excited about, and then anticipating a really good fall.
Excellent. Stacy, down in San Antonio, again, you're somebody who your property has actually, I believe the entire portfolio that's in Texas remained open through the whole process. It's a little bit all hands on deck, as you mentioned when you're coming on the call. You were playing the role of director of sales and marketing, parking attendant. So obviously, it sounds like the hotel's got valet parking open and running. If I walk into the Hotel Valencia today in downtown San Antonio, what am I going to see? How's it looking?
Well, for us, we did stay open the whole time. There were some nights that we only had 1 or 2 guests. We did have some loyal clients who stayed with us, and some business travel accounts have stayed with us the whole time. But pretty much when you walk into Hotel Valencia, you're going to see not the smiling faces, but the smiling eyes of all our wonderful employees. We are also under a mask mandate now. All commercial businesses that provides goods or services to the public are required to have a policy in place that people have to wear masks, and that's how the counties got around the governor not mandating masks. So we are mandating masks at this point. But you walk into Valencia, you're going to see markings on the floor of social distancing and, wear a mask and the things that we're doing. But you're going to see, for us, a fully operational hotel, business as normal as we can. We are, obviously putting space between rooms. If a guest checks out, we are waiting 24 hours before going in and cleaning room, so we have, the standard things. A lot of the things that are making people safe, we're doing. But other than that, same great service, same great hotel. So
awesome. And I think the one thing that when we did this type of panel discussion about a month ago, the biggest thing that I took from that is things are so different based upon your state and local laws, right? And that's why I think it's so important that we have kind of different perspectives for different parts of the country and so forth. Robin, you're kind of in a situation where I believe you've actually even hosted some small events and so forth, correct?
Yeah, well, thank you, John. Thank you for having me on here today. Just want to tell everybody really quickly before I get carried away with my commentary, but just want to say thank you for being here today. This is great to see all these lovely faces, some recognizable faces. So really excited to see everybody's doing well, and it looks like everybody's healthy. So first and foremost, thank you for being here. Thank you, John, for setting this up. It's really a great way to connect and stay connected. As for Florida, as most of you have heard and know by now, Florida is the leader in our country to really start off and kick off and continue to do events, meetings, and restaurants are opening up. Our big message today to any consumer or customer is that we're open. We are open and ready and fully operational. So we're really excited. We have a couple of items throughout the hotel that remain closed. And as we kind of work through some of the guidelines to make sure that safety is up front, and we're looking at every precaution or taking every precaution to make sure that our guest members and customers are safe. But as for the state of Florida, you can walk into restaurants. You could, there's certain counties require masks. Palm Beach happens to be one of them until July 14th. We will mandate masks in every public area. So, but the restaurants are open, sporting outlets are open. So as things ramp up, we're just getting excited to be the leader. Like John had mentioned, we're hosting events. We're actually doing events, and it's for my team, my staff. It's a big deal. It's a big deal to get this going, and trying to learn and adapt. We've been open since the beginning. Our goal is to remain agile and adapt to exactly what is being thrown at us daily. So we've done that. We've been very successful. We'll continue to be successful, but we need your help. And we're really excited about you guys starting to get ready to get on planes and come visit us in Florida. I know that there's a lot of information out there, but we are open. That's my message today.
Here's I've got a couple questions here that are starting to come in that I'm going to ask in a minute, but Let me go around the room real quick. Robin, so from a state of Florida, PGA National Resort, what is your governing law as far as how many people can you have? What's the space limitations? What capacity can you be at? You know, and we'll go around the room real quick. So Rob, why don't you start?
Yeah, thank you. For the state of Florida, we're taking precautions. So we're making sure that we're working with our customers and understanding their program needs first and foremost to understand what their guidelines are. But as far as our capacity goes, we are open till capacity. Now we are being very cautious with exactly what our customers are asking us. If there's a social distancing guideline requirement that they want to mandate and they want to enforce in their programming, that limits space. So we recognize that. We have ballrooms as big as 10,000 square feet, but when you incorporate a 6-foot requirement, that limitation now dwindles that ballroom space up to 160 to 180 people maximum. So again, taking those guidelines into consideration and certainly working with them daily as kind of the precaution we're taking, and we're proceeding forward.
Stephanie, what's the capacity availability at the lodge right now?
Yeah, we're, minimal capacity. We're, practicing social distancing, of course. We have new guidelines with all of our event space until things do open up. And just trying to be as flexible as possible with our groups, offering options for, as much outdoor for meetings as well as receptions, dinners. We have specifically for San Diego, we have just submitted a request to Governor Newsom to open things up for meetings and events, wedding ceremonies and things like that. So just trying to get to the next level where we can, accommodate some of the larger programs. But just flexibility is our key message. Face coverings is mandated as well. And just our staff is really well trained on making sure that guests, obviously employees first off, are practicing masks, but also the guests, it's a requirement. We're handing out amenity bags to each of the guests as they check in, and it includes 2 masks, hand sanitizer, and wipes. Just trying to stay with that 5-diamond level of service, and then obviously practicing social distancing in all areas.
Hey, Steve, from your, how do I unmute you, Steve? So, Steve, from your perspective, with the things that Stephanie just mentioned, I mean, would you agree that that's substantially over and above what a lot of the brands are doing?
Yeah, what they're doing in terms of the amenities isn't unusual, but it's not the norm, right? So I think what they're doing and the emphasis with the staff, emphasis on training the staff, I think the biggest thing that you can do with your employees is just make sure that they're aware of guests coming from different areas, right? And that they're going to have different experiences and lenses that they're going to be seeing your controls through, right? So they could be coming from Nashville, a place that's fairly wide open, to a place that's not. And so I think as Stephanie touched on, and as you're conscious of this with your groups, make sure that your teams are sensitive and aware of that, and that they're going to have to process different perceptions and views. But I think what they're doing sounds exceptional in terms of how they're approaching this in a measured way, and that's consistent with the laws in San Diego and California.
Hey, Steve, Joan asked me a question here. She said, are hotels requiring temperature checks on guests upon arrival or during their stay? What do you see on that across the board?
I see not many, if any, hotels temperature checking guests. They may ask if they've had symptoms, but I'm not aware of any hotel brand that is doing it, or management company. I'm aware of a couple of brands that have specifically said, we're not going to do that.
Okay. Good to know. And then, and Michael, where are you at in Vegas? I mean, Vegas is always the big, what's going on in Vegas. What do you guys as from a capacity perspective and social distancing and?
Just touching base on the last question, we actually are taking temperatures on check-in, and most hotels are doing that. So that's something that it wasn't mandated, but it's something that most hotels are doing in Las Vegas. They're taking temperatures at the time of check-in. Some places such as Wynn and Venetian actually have a thermo detector, if you will. As people walk through, they can tell exactly what their temperature is. So we are doing that. As it relates to capacity, right now we're looking at 50% in our restaurants. As it relates to meetings and events, 50 people max. So obviously our trade show industry and large meeting industry is pretty much shut down at this point until we get approval to grow that number. But right now it's at 50.
And then Stacy, what about from your perspective in San Antonio? What kind of capacity numbers and so forth are you looking at?
Well, for us, it depends on what the event is. We have meetings and events where at 50% occupancy, but we're still being required to do 6-foot social distancing. So as I've told people kind of across the board, the 50%, the 75%, the 100% doesn't really matter, because 6 feet social distancing is kind of overruling all of that right now. So for us, our ballroom that we can normally do 100, when you figure in the 6-foot social distancing, we're at 63 right now, but we're a small luxury boutique hotel on the Riverwalk. 63 in our ballroom is a good size for us. So, you know, we're pretty happy with that. Restaurants are at 75%. And then honestly, weddings, for some reason, are in a different category in the state of Texas right now. We can actually, for a wedding, seat 10 people at a table, but the tables are supposed to be 6 feet apart. So it depends on what type of event it is. But for conferences, meetings, and events, we are at 50% occupancy, and that's your fire code occupancy. And then we as a hotel are doing 6-foot social distancing, and I've figured out all the space for that. And we actually, my entire team has a chart on what they can fit in every single space we have. And we actually have all the diagrams done. So as soon as we get a lead or something, we're able to send both of those things straight to the client and say, this is what fits in this space. Here's your diagram for this space. And then we also have, I saw someone did ask a little bit about food and beverage. We've already worked on the food and beverage menus. What does buffets look like? All of those things. So we have all of those things available for the leads as soon as they come in.
Nice. Hey, Steve, one of the questions here Stuart asked is, are all the brands using the same cleaning guidelines and templates for room and public space? I mean, I think we know that answer, but why don't you address
Yeah, I think the short answer to that is yes. And I can say that affirmatively, because if you look at any of the brands, any of the management companies, they're always referring to CDC guidelines for disinfectants, things like that, as well as guidelines developed by the AHLA. So I think the short answer to that is yes. Some of them have their different kind of packaging. That's what makes them their brand. But at the core of it, they're all doing almost identical things. And then like Stephanie had said, some are going above and beyond by giving people hand sanitizers, masks, and so on.
Got it. Hey, Robin, since you're the one on the phone who's kind of had the most opportunity with groups, have you had any opportunities where you've had more than one group in-house at the same time?
Yeah, we have actually, and we're doing everything that everybody's mentioned on this panel already. It's just been great to be able to see, our big movement through this process was training our staff in exactly how to handle and manage customers. Ownership at the hotel, along with the leadership at the hotel, has done a phenomenal job of doing that and investing the time that we do have with the staff that we do have on property to make sure that they understand how things are operated. It starts from, the arrival process to the food and beverage components, but making sure the chefs are involved and they know exactly how to cater food, how to store food. You talk about the operational drive there, and then of course the guest experience. So our goal continues to be to meeting the satisfaction of our guests today. And how we do that is just making sure that they know that they feel special and they feel like they own the hotel anytime they're there. And if you could deploy that and encourage that more and more and showcase that, I think it always hands for a good event. But again, keeping the events separated and away from each other works really well. And we have the capacity to do that at PGA, having two conference wings.
Hey, Steve, here's a question that I think is more geared towards you that Bob's asked me. It says, as we develop protocols for program operations, the sanitation distancing things are easy and mostly common sense, but we're struggling about what to do if someone becomes symptomatic on site. What are the hotel's protocols and any input, from any planners or anything else as well? So Steve, what have you seen, again, because you're not only dealing with a lot of our properties, but also a lot of the big chains. I come to a meeting, I'm an attendee, day 2, all of a sudden I feel a little under the weather, and guess what? What kind of protocol should be in place for something like that?
Yeah, so what you should do is have a way to isolate them and ask them to quarantine in their room. That's really as easy as it can get in a difficult situation, right? First thing, and as Robin had said, be conscious of their guests' needs. Can I get you medical assistance? Can we offer you the services of some doctor? Can we get you set up, if you feel like you need to go to a hospital, try to be as responsive as you would be as if they said they had a stomach ache or they caught the flu, right? But be mindful of having a conversation with them that, given the circumstances, we'd really prefer that you stay in your guest room. And to that end, we will do everything we can to try to make you as comfortable as possible. We'll be able to get you food and beverage kinds of services, but it'll be kind of that knock and drop kind of stuff. If you need housekeeping or additional amenities and services, same kind of thing. I would make sure that there's someone checking in on them regularly so they don't feel like they've been quarantined, literally. But I think the safest thing to do is to work with them, ask for their cooperation, and then circle back with that meeting planner and let them know that, hey, this has been brought to our attention. We may want to keep an eye on people that they've been associating with, hanging out with, sitting with, things like that, so that if others start to feel symptomatic or sick, that we can start to try to nip that in the bud as quickly as possible.
We're going to jump around a little bit here through this discussion as we did last time. But Cynthia's asking, are hotels being more accommodating and changing, terminating contracts, future contracts, contracting process? Michael, why don't we start with you? I got a group that wants to come this fall. How flexible are you with me?
We're quite flexible, but I'd like to start by saying that there's no textbook for this. There's no manual because every situation is different. So we try to be as flexible as possible. If we have a deposit, we do our best, if it makes sense, to move it to the following quarter or following year, if that's what makes sense. But the whole name of the game right now in Las Vegas is, from a contractual term, from a rate term, from a policy term, we are trying to be as flexible as possible and partnering with our clients as much as we can.
Okay, right. Stephanie, where are you at? There you go. Steph, why don't you tell us about contracting out at Torrey Pines?
Yeah, I think similar to Michael, just attrition and cancellation terms, just trying to, make clients feel as comfortable as possible, not knowing how things are going to look. We just want to do what we can to make it work. Those are the kind of the two items that seem to be a focus with clients. And so, stepping outside standard terms of 10% attrition, offering more than that, just come out, especially for 2020, just, we'd love to welcome the groups here.
Hey, Robin. So, rumor on the street is that if I want to come with a group in 20, you're giving it away to me. But how are things looking beyond 20? Because as we've all spent, at DMI, we've worked with over a couple hundred groups in the last 90 days. The goal was always rebook, not cancel. Whether we moved them from April to October or April of 20 to 21, or how's availability looking 21 and beyond?
Yeah, first of all, you've got to stay off social media, John. You hear too many rumors, so stay off social media. But no, thank you for asking that. That's a great question, to be honest with you. We, just like everybody else, flexibility and fairness, I think, is all, as a hotelier, we could ask for. This, the last several months have been a testing ground for, and a resetting ground for just acknowledgement of how fragile our industry can be. And it really has showcased that. But as we look into 21, I'm very proud to say that we have a lot of demand on the books for 21. And we're very excited about what the first quarter in South Florida is probably the most desirable place to be. I don't think anybody could take that repetition away from us, so we're very excited about that. But I will tell you that the demand over first quarter is very high. And I would encourage anybody to certainly have the dialogue and get feelers out, to get information in their hands to understand availability or to source availability now, because we've got an opportunity in our hands where hotels are being as flexible as they possibly can be, to make sure that our owners are very intrigued and interested in getting you on the books. So we want to help you get there and work around whatever availability we have remaining. The first quarter looks very strong. And then, of course, in 2020, I'm willing to talk to anybody. I'll talk to Walls if I have to.
Hey, Michael, since you're in a little bit different boat as far as your restrictions out in Las Vegas, What if, Denise is asking, if you got a program for mid to late 21, and they're requiring social distancing, which means obviously they're going to require a lot more space than normal. Are we able to be flexible and things like that? Or are you offering flexibility and things like that?
Yeah, again, that's a case-by-case basis, but the short answer to that question at this point is yes. We don't exactly know when the ship is going to turn on this thing, and depending on the client, if it's a good client and we can accommodate it, by all means, we're doing everything we can to ensure everyone is comfortable moving forward during the contracting process.
Stacy, same with you in San Antonio?
Definitely. And we, for us, kind of going back to the other question, 2020, very flexible. We'll work with anybody on anything. We are also seeing first quarter of 21 very busy with leads and stuff that's already on the book. So, the things that are wanting to move, it's the availability, is getting a little tight. As far as people, as attrition and force majeure and that, again, like what Robin said, 20, we would rather have the meeting and have some semblance of meeting and keeping our employees and associates working this year than not have a meeting at all. And so we're willing to work with anybody to make a successful meeting.
Well, I know you and I were working on a group for October that I believe it was about 50 rooms, and they kind of came around and said, hey, look, it looks like only about 20 of the couples, want to travel, and the solution was send the 20 couples. We'd rather have 20 couples than 0 couples.
Right. And so for us, like if they would have canceled outright, their cancellation fee would have been, X dollars, say it was $5,000. And so I basically just said to them, can you please just commit to what the cancellation fee would be today, that you would spend that money in October, and please have these people still come. Please let's still have the meeting so we can keep our associates working and, get people in, in the hotel and here.
Hey, Steve, there's a question that's out there, which I have not heard of this situation, but Sharon says, I've heard some hotels are having on-site medical personnel. Are you aware of that happening with hotels?
Not specifically as it relates to or in response to COVID-19. The locations that I know have it is related to, I think going back to what Stephanie said, properties that have housed healthcare workers, correctional officers, first responders, things like that. I do know from firsthand experience from hotels that I've worked with that have that kind of guest demographic that they do. But I'm not aware of any that are having any on site in preparation for a response to it. Michael in Vegas might actually be better answering that just from his familiarity with what's going on around town though, because they're doing a lot of things differently and to a greater degree than some of the other properties and hotels across the country are.
Yeah, we personally do not at the Golden Nugget, but I had heard that Wynn and Venetian were having some medical staff on property. This was prior to opening, and I don't know if that ended up taking place or not, but I know that was discussed.
One of the other things, John, I saw was the question about was testing, right? As if someone said they're symptomatic, should the hotel or can the hotel make arrangements to get tests? I think the answer to that is based on that geography and based on the availability and priority that tests are being administered. So my experience in Arizona, right, it's a hot spot, right, literally and figuratively. But they're still trying to be selective with who they're administering tests to, particularly those that have symptoms. If they're not in a high risk demographic, they're asking people to stay home, monitor your symptoms. If they start to deteriorate or get worse, come back and see us. But I think if you've got a guest in a hotel that starts to feel symptomatic, they may not be giving tests right away.
Okay. Is it AV? Here's an interesting question from Stuart. Are AV departments utilizing in-room TV channels for broadcasting the meeting seminar if the guest is symptomatic? So now I get there, I'm not feeling well, I'm quarantined in my room, I'm not overly sick, but I have symptoms, but I want to be a participant, I want to watch. I would imagine across the board, Michael, that's something, Stacy, somebody? I mean, we have the capability if obviously if they were wanted to set something up like that.
Well, and I think it's very similar to what we're doing now. I mean, it's a Zoom, it's a Microsoft Teams, it's, you know, something like that. You know, for us in our hotel, you know, we have DirecTV and all of it, so we don't have a dedicated channel, but it's very easy for us to make sure that the things are being recorded and being, you know, sent through. I also noticed on the AV question, someone asked about microphones. If it's the difference between having a piece of business and not having a piece of business and being able to make that client feel comfortable and we need to change out microphones, you know, those are easy things for us to take care of to make our clients feel great about coming and doing business with us.
Hey, John, it's Steve. I feel an obligation if you're talking about broadcasting over the hotel's channels.
Yes, sir.
Some of the content of the meetings, some of the meetings may have some information that if you aren't attendee, you shouldn't be entitled to. So I would echo what Stacy said. If you've got the capacity to do this on Zoom or Teams or something other than the hotel channel, that if I'm sitting in my room flipping channels, I can watch and I shouldn't. I would, from a security risk point of view, I would really kind of lean towards what Stacy said. Look at what technology is available on iPads, phones, laptops, and so on versus the TV channel.
Great point. Great point. Here's a question. We'll just go around the room. How far out is your hotel recognizing force majeure cancellations, Stephanie?
I'd say probably through the end of the year. Again, it's a case-by-case basis. If we can accommodate it with 6-foot distancing, you know, it's a different story. And I just want to quickly, I know I'm jumping back, but for future business, 2021 for the Lodge at Torrey Pines is a busy year. It's US Open year on Torrey. So it was already, we had some compression and then we've had some groups move into 21. So we're actually really focused on, you know, being more flexible for 22 business. If anyone has anything that they're looking that, you know, further out for, we're being flexible there. But as far as force majeure goes, it's, you know, kind of a case by case basis. But really through the end of 2020 is what we're looking at.
Hey, Michael, force majeure Las Vegas.
Same thing, case by case, but from a force majeure standpoint, say someone has a meeting for November right now and wants to change or they implement the force majeure policy. We would probably say in November, well, really, force majeure doesn't apply to your meeting in November, but we're still going to work with you and move you to a different month if that's what you're looking for, but case by case basis.
Robin?
That's a great question.
Florida's open, baby.
We try, you know, the first things first, we do futures contracts with hotels, right? That's kind of for programming events, we do a futures contract. And with that knowledge and commitment to each other, unless we're in force majeure, unless force majeure is active, we're not in force majeure. But we are willing and flexible with every customer to work and make sure that we meet their demands and their requirements and the safety of their attendees. So if there's true force majeure in effect with it's an impossibility because Florida has been open, the resort has been open. If there's a true impossibility, then absolutely we will engage that communication and do the best for both parties to make sure that everybody's satisfied.
Stacy, force majeure San Antonio at the Hotel Valencia.
We were taking force majeure through June. And then really from there, I mean, we're not kind of like what Michael and Robin said. I mean, we're not technically in a force majeure situation, but we haven't had guests that are asking to cancel. We just don't. They're asking to either modify what the contract they have, you know, can we work with them on attrition, knowing that what's going on, you know, it's, you know, we're obviously working with people, but we've moved a lot too. So we're not asking, we haven't been asked for just a lot of just flat out, we're canceling, we don't want to work with you again or anymore, you know, for this. It's more people are asking, hey, can you move us? Hey, can we adjust? And of course, you know, we are accommodating all of those things.
In states where 50% occupancy is allowed, does the hotel does the hotel have to also seat 6 feet apart? the disparity in those two numbers is great. Steve?
I would say that I would say 6 feet apart, because that's the standard, that's the guideline, that's what CDC, that's what all of these health authorities and governmental authorities are saying. So I think, as Robin was saying, where you've got a couple of exhibit halls where you could play football games, I wouldn't limit yourself to 50% capacity if you could get 60, 70, 80% capacity by keeping people 6 feet apart. So I would focus on the 6 foot rule, which is pretty ubiquitous right now, unless, of course, that 50% capacity from like a health code, a local jurisdiction, a fire code, or some other what we call authority having jurisdiction would supersede that 6 foot guideline, that 6 foot recommendation.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think, you know, the purpose of the call is for everybody to understand that their environment is probably very different than the environment of the person in the screen next to them. You know, here I sit in Nashville and our bars are open, there's live entertainment, our restaurants are open. You know, we're in the bottom 10% of cases across the country. And people, I'm sure, are sitting there looking at that going, oh, what are they doing? You know, and this week at DMI, we've had 4 new group contracts go definite. They're all for later this year. You know, there are some corporations that have travel, you know, freezes. There's no ability to travel. There's a mandate of you know, that they are grounded. And then there's other organizations that are looking at things different. I think the most important thing from our perspective is just to kind of map out everything. Like, here's the scenario. Here's the things that exist. We're in the travel business, but travel if you're comfortable, or travel when it makes sense, or, you know, travel when it's right. But in the meantime, here's how certain areas of the country, you know, are progressing. I mean, Steve, you're sitting in LAX airport. You know, it doesn't look like you got a lot of friends sitting around you. I know Delta expanded their flight capacity yesterday. I think it was by 1,000 flights they've just added into the fleet, and off they go, right? You flew Southwest. Southwest has middle seats open. Is that right?
Yes. So they're only selling to the capacity of their aisle and window seats.
Yeah. So, you know, so I think it's we watch the news, we read social media, and unless we're out there doing it, or we know somebody who's out there doing it, we really don't know. We have no idea. And obviously it depends on what city we're in as far as, you know, what actually is happening. So, what about, as far as, here's a question from Betsy. Due to what's going on in the industry, what, if any, new verbiage is being put into contracts to protect the client as well as the hotel, since there's so much uncertainty? Does anybody want to raise their hand on that one and jump in, dive in the pool?
I would just say epidemic and pandemic are being added to a force majeure clause, as well as some other out clauses, if you will, within the contract. And I've seen that, I don't want to say consistently, but I've seen that more than anything else. So I'd say that one.
Here, Steve, and I know legality is not your expertise, but you play one on TV. So Abby just said, you know, we actually just had a client update their clauses that are very COVID specific. There's always the two sides of the coin. If it's too specific, then it's probably not covered. But if it's not specific enough, then, you know, it's too ambiguous. So, you know, what are you hearing on some of the other panels you've been on and so forth, Steve?
So COVID specific deals with the virus and the pandemic that we're in right now. It's COVID-19. Whereas, like Michael said, where you've got clauses and phrases in there that are pandemic, that are other kinds of things. To your point, John, if you have a clause that's COVID specific, then it's limited to things that are categorized or so named COVID.
Hello, welcome to LAX.
Hold on, I've got some background behind me. So, but I would say, you know, be conscious of, you want to try to make sure that you're not limiting yourself by the language, but you're not so broad that you don't cover anything.
Alan asked a question, will the termination of 25% of airline seats, or airline sales teams in October affect the way of doing business? How has the furloughing firings of major CBD teams affected you? So more so from a, you know, we're a collection, you know, as a general rule, we're a collection of independent hotels. We're family owned. The owners walk through these places, or we're part of small groups of hotels. You got a lot of longevity and a lot of staff. Again, 3 of the 4 panelists on the call have been open the entire time. But obviously everybody's going through furloughs and restructurings. In the meantime, obviously occupancy, can cure all sins. But, moving forward, Michael, maybe you can give us a perspective at maybe Golden Nugget, Las Vegas, or Landry's in particular. What do you see? How do you see people taking on bigger roles and more responsibility, at least in the short term, or how's that going to work?
Well, yeah, it's very comparable, I'd say right now, as to what Stacy was talking about earlier. We're wearing numerous hats in the sales department, as well as the operations team does it well. That said, due to the occupancy being not quite what it was 4 months ago, a lot of this polices itself. So the service levels are still there. We're just being a little bit more creative and probably a little bit more efficient from a staffing level. And as if you were a guest at the hotel, you notice none of this behind the scenes stuff. I mean, we're still a busy hotel. People are happy. I talk to guests every day and they say, what a great experience, and are very complimentary of what we've pulled off in such a short period of time. Remembering again, we're 2,400 rooms with 12 restaurants, 11 lounges. So it's a big ship to turn, but I think we've done a great job of that with a very efficient staff at this point.
Well, and I think to get down to the, what do I see? How would I experience it? Some of the conversations we've had, I believe, in areas where there's slot machines in blocks of 4, the middle 2 are blocked out. So that way I can sit on one end and you can sit on another end, and we can go both pull our one-armed bandits and have our social distancing. Correct?
Correct. So just touching base on that real quick, Vegas as an entity has taken this very seriously, the social distancing guidance. So to your point, if there's a bank of 4 slot machines, which there many times are, someone's at each end. All of the table games dealers are wearing masks, as well as the players now. The chips are sanitized every hour. The cards are thrown away every hour. So again, we've taken this very, very seriously.
John, I'd like to chime in on the whole CVB thing and that San Antonio being a major convention city, our Visit San Antonio did lose half of their team as of right now. But I think, John, like you said, as a collection of hotels, we're a small luxury boutique hotel on the Riverwalk. We weren't as dependent on the CVB or VSA maybe as some of the bigger hotels are. We take care of our our own groups. We're our own entity, and so we always we're effectively ourselves, if that makes sense. I mean, there were very few citywides a year that we were dependent on. So I feel like for us, it's business as usual, and we're able to operate as as usual moving forward. It hasn't affected us as a hotel.
Hey, Stacy, let's start with you since you're on a roll. From your local government, from CDC guidelines, what about the testing of employees? What do you guys do? And we'll go around the room on that.
Sure. So every day we have one employee entrance. All of the employees go into that employee entrance. The schedule is posted. The manager on duty goes downstairs, pulls the questionnaire for the employees. And when I mean employees, I mean like even the general manager is tested by someone else. Like not, every single person is, we temperature check them. We ask them 6 questions before they're allowed in the building. If they say yes to any of those questions, they are not allowed in the back door. We take them to the side and then address the situation. If everything's fine, we keep, we temperature check everybody. If it's 100 or greater, they are not allowed to work that day. We do send them home. And then, from there, we are, washing hands every hour. We have masks and gloves. We actually right now are still doing to-go containers for room service. We're doing drops for room service. So our employees are not going into guest rooms when a guest is present. So I mean, we're checking all of our employees. Even John's been here, so he knows, but my sales office is actually a block away from the hotel because we build beautiful hotels, but we don't build a lot of office space to manage them. So my team is actually offsite, and I temperature check them every morning, whether they're going to the hotel or not. Everyone does that. So we're holding to all of those standards.
Stephanie, got anything to add to that stuff?
Pretty much the same as what Stacy said. I actually had my temperature check today. We each get a stamp that we're approved to enter the property once we've had our temperature check. So same, guidelines, just a lot of cleaning of the resort, constant checking on everything, making sure everything is clean and sanitized in all areas, including the pool.
And Michael, you got the most people in the tribe there. So how are you guys handling it in your group?
We have 2 entrances. The managers come in through a different entrance than some of the hourly associates, but at either door, we get our temperature checked. We're asked 6 questions. And prior to coming back on board, we all went through quite extensive training as it relates to COVID and some of the safety measures that we're taking and why it's so important to wear face masks and such.
Nice. Robin?
I thought it was a great question. Going to mirror Stacy. It's really one point of entry, one point of exit, monitoring, testing employees daily. And, it starts from us as managers to kind of lead by example, see something, say something mentality. And, again, just we don't have, like every other hotel, we're onboarding staff still as the occupancy levels grow. So having that core team that's there every day, and we're all working long hours. It's all about making sure the health and safety of our employees are paramount, because without them, we wouldn't succeed. So doing that to the best of our ability, number one. Number two is, I think even internally when we do meetings, it's a lot of team or Zoom meetings, whether we're sitting next door offices to each other. So just that limiting that contact is very important, because everybody, after 8 hours, you're spending 16 hours a day doing something else. And we want to make sure that when you're checked in, you're ready to go and you're healthy and safe.
We've talked about, Steph, you've got the amenity packet check-in, and obviously everyone else is going through additional expenses with sanitizer stations and whatnot. Is anyone trying to build that back? Has anyone created a COVID amenity fee, or whatever we might even call it? And Steve, do you see that happening? I would imagine with our hotels, and I don't want to step on my tongue here and say it, but I would imagine with our hotels, we're probably not. We're usually, being independents, we're usually the most flexible. Steve, are you seeing with the chains that it's something a little bit different with them, or?
No, not at all. I do see it with, on social media. I've seen people posting that they've got a COVID fee on restaurant bills, but I'm not aware of any hotel resort property that's doing that.
Hey, Robin or Michael, let me ask you. So I got a question here. If a group cancels for November and they're not currently technically in force majeure, and this is a hard question because it doesn't a lot of times apply to our hotels. But if somebody cancels because they feel that they're not going to be able to pull the event off, but then come November, there actually is still COVID and everything else. So initially they were charged a cancellation, but then it becomes a force majeure issue down the road. Are you running into anything like that? Are you even teeing yourself up with it? Or you feel you're just being flexible enough that those kind of things may not happen? Or help me out here.
Mike, you want to rock, paper, scissors here, or would?
By you win.
Okay, perfect. Now, it's all, again, John, it's all about flexibility. It's open communication. It's transparency between the organization and the hotel and understanding what their pickup is. For November, I would tell you that a little premature to have a conversation about force majeure. That's kind of a starting point, because what I want to do is partner with you and monitor and see how things are floating. As I've mentioned before on this call, the hotel is open. We're willing. There's no impossibility to get here. but we want to cater, and we want to definitely learn what's happening to an organization that maybe their attendees or corporates suggested that they can't, some of their subsidiary companies can't travel. We want to make sure that we're learning about that as quickly as possible so we can start making changes. I think Stacy hit it on the head when she said hotels want to conduct meetings, even if they're at a reduced number. I think the takeaway with for me here is I want to make sure that my employees are employed. And in order to do that, I have to be able to conduct events and meetings. Forecasting is a nightmare. I don't think anybody could forecast today what the next 3 months is going to hold for us. So that is something that, you know, we've advanced that communication with ownership and just to make sure that they understand that, guys, it's so unpredictable. All we could do is listen and act at the information we have on hand. And at this juncture for November, I would communicate that exact same thing and say, you know, I am willing to listen, to learn, and work with you, but my goal, my first priority is making sure that our employees are working, and it won't be working if your program won't actualize. So how do we mend that, and how do we forecast that, and how we find a favorable or desirable option for both parties?
And again, I would always follow that up with, we want to make the meeting happen in a safe, equitable, CDC guideline following path, right? Hey, Michael, here, I'm actually going to let you off the hook on that one because I got a different one for you. So groups in the future. I got a group in 21. You know, we've got to exhibit some social distancing. We feel our numbers are going to fall. Because you're the largest ship in the fleet here, are you seeing a lot of renegotiations? Are you seeing people come to you asking for renegotiations? How's that looking?
Sometimes that's happened actually a little bit in 2020, not so much in 2021 just yet, but they'll come in, you know, from a social distancing standpoint, we want to ensure that we're meeting COC requirements and meeting the needs of the client. So it has happened a couple times where they say, well, we're going to need more space. And we've already done a pretty good job of allotting for that due to some of the space freeing up, as if you will, in 2020. Would we do something like that in 21? Yes, of course. But we haven't had that happen to us yet in 2021, just 2020, and we've accommodated every request.
I mean, I always feel that, you know, for 23 years, we've been representing independent hotels, and our pitch has always been the flexibility and the willingness and, you know, all that, you know, stuff. And obviously you guys continue to echo, you know, what we've always said to everybody. Stephanie, do you see, are you getting requests for, you know, reconfiguring? And again, you're in a little bit of a different boat. I mean, you're clearly behind where everyone else is. So from your perspective, I can't do there what I can do at PGA or Valencia or Golden Nugget. But obviously, you know, you mentioned, you know, they've already petitioned the governor and everything else.
Right.
But for some of these fall programs and beyond, are you seeing people kind of say, hey, we need to reconfigure this?
We've been, yes, it's a good question. We've been really trying to make them work to the point that we're, you know, splitting general session and doing virtual, streaming it between the two spaces. Our largest ballroom is 3,250. So some of these larger programs, you know, over 100 people, we're limited. So splitting the group has been an option and streaming general session. We've also actually reached out to our neighbor property, Hilton Torrey Pines, for at least 2 groups. They've got a 12,000 square foot ballroom that we've got a great partnership that we've proposed to some of our groups to be able to use that ballroom for their general sessions. So just, again, creativity, you know, our driving range at Torrey Pines Golf Course, offering that for, it's a, you know, large space, just trying to be as flexible as possible. And I think just if I can echo Robin on people want to have their meetings, that really seems to be more and more. I think people are tired of, you know, what we're dealing with. And this, in this last couple of weeks has been, we've seen an increase in contracts going out and coming back. I think right now we're at 5 open groups, most for 2020, but some for 2021 as well. So seeing some momentum there that we're very encouraged by.
Do you, so staying on that, do you feel that of those groups and contracts, are they more local business? Are they from all over the US? you know, what type of stuff are you seeing? And I'll go around and kind of ask everybody that.
Yeah, for us, it is mostly West Coast. That Orange County, one of them is a relocation. I think it was Mexico. They're wanting to do more local. So definitely the West Coast market, the local is what we're seeing.
Robin?
No, another good question. Thank you for that. No, you know, we're headed into summer here in Florida, so it's 98 degrees and absolutely gorgeous outside in Florida. But that also trends when we look at segmentation, and we usually historically always see a shift in our segmentation in business. So we start to really shift towards more of kind of the rec teams, the baseball groups, the softball groups, the sporting events, some local Florida associations. So we see a lot of that business still trending, and it's kind of neat to see that come back as Florida opens up its gates for more sports teams to be able to do activities and events. So in that region, you know, we continue to find a little bit of success there when as we go into the summer. Hope that answers that question.
It does. Stacy, do you see, there's a lot of what you're dealing with Texas people?
Well, and 75% of what we do anyways is Texas. Texas is a big state. So our primary markets are drive markets, even when it comes to corporate. So we do some East Coast, not a lot of West Coast, some, you know, Chicago and down. But yes, everything we're doing right now is very regional. Everything we're seeing right now is very regional.
Michael, you're probably the exception to the rule because, well, everybody goes to Vegas, right?
To an extent, but surprisingly, everything that we're seeing right now from a group standpoint is primarily from the Southwest, whether that be association, small corporate, or sports teams, if you will. So the Southwest is hot for us right now. No one really coming in from a group standpoint, say east of the Mississippi.
Hey, Steve, here's a question Michelle has. The question is, how are you handling travelers coming in from states with hotspot states to states requiring quarantine? And I just can't believe any of that burden falls on a hotel. But correct me and tell me the way that should be going down.
So, you know, you've got to be aware of that. But you can't lock people in their room, right? I mean, Hawaii has done a pretty good job of that, right? So Hawaii has pretty much quarantined anybody that's not coming from, even inter-island. They were at one point, they were quarantining people for 14 days. So, you know,
but the government's doing that at the airport, correct?
Pardon me?
The government is doing that at the airport?
Yes.
So the burden's not on the hotel.
Correct. So once they're in your hotel, I mean, you know, how do you know this person who's wandering through your lobby or, you know, walking through your pool area is from Arizona, which is now one of those states that can't go to New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. And so, you know, the burden it doesn't fall on the hotel. You don't, as a hotel manager operator, you don't have the responsibility to manage or otherwise police that state imposed quarantine.
Anyone else have anything to add to that? Does anyone have anything in place? I mean, I would be very surprised because obviously now you're taking on burden and responsibility, and God forbid you miss somebody, and then a situation exists, and you've been telling people that that's what you're doing, and you miss it. So, you know, I think it kind of comes down to again, as we see many of our hotels, you know, now many of them were open the whole time. Many of them are open with a few exceptions. You know, we have hotels, our beach hotels, our Florida hotels, you know, they're running full occupancies on the weekends, not so much during the week. The leisure business is coming back. People are antsy. They want to get on planes. But from a group perspective, you know, you've got those that think one way and those that think another way. And I think the most important thing that I always continue to tell everybody is you have to do what you're most comfortable with. And there's obviously destinations that can accommodate your comfort level. And you know, we feel our team is completely intact, where we know many of the chains and earlier as mentioned, many of the CVBs have laid people off. You know, we're here. We have a whole ongoing file of data as far as making sure we know who's under what restrictions. We continue to maintain communications with our hotels to make sure as things change, that we're in the loop with that as well. So, you know, we're not here to say, hey, you should or you shouldn't, or we're just basically here to try to provide data and keep everybody up to speed. With that said, we're in the travel business. I will be getting on my first plane on Sunday. So, Steve, as you sit in LAX, and we still haven't, I don't think, seen anybody walk past you. You know, I'll be interested to see what it is when I fly into Miami on Sunday and fly out of Fort Lauderdale on Thursday next week, just to get a firsthand experience of how it all, you know, how it all goes down. Does anyone, any of my partners here have anything that they would like to add here before we conclude? Stephanie, is there anything more you need to add?
I don't think so.
Okay,
Just
thank you.
Opportunity to share what we're doing here in Southern California.
Great. Thank you for your time today. And Stacy, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Sorry, it took me a second to unmute myself. Just, you know, open communication, and please talk with us, especially as an independent. You know, we are flexible. You know, whatever we can do to help our clients, and especially our ongoing clients. You know, please know that it's our heart of hospitality to do. You know, to take care of people. So, you know, that's truly what we want to do.
Hey, Michael, I'm going to, before you get to say anything, I'm going to throw you a question that came up here. And that is, and since you, again, you have the largest department for this, can you provide us a day in the housekeeping department when it comes to keeping your hotel clean via CDC and state health and brand guidelines?
We have a very large internal manual, if you will, that we've had to implement since COVID-19 reared its ugly head. I can't go into details on that, but I can tell you, I feel very, very comfortable given what's going on here. Anywhere I go in the hotel, it is as clean as I've ever seen it. And you will see that walking through the hotel, because there's people everywhere cleaning with the appropriate gear on, with the appropriate chemicals and such. But very, very safe time to be in Las Vegas. And actually a very economical time in a lot of ways, which kind of ties into the closing of my comments.
Perfect. Robin, is there anything that you'd like to add?
I just want to say thank you to everybody for listening and giving us the time today. I will tell you that my message is, as I started off, we are open, we're ready. We'll quarantine you for 14 days away from your family if you guys are tired of seeing them around too much. But I will tell you that I'll leave you with one comment that, you know, was very interesting today, is that it sounds like we're all in this together. We're all here to work together and make sure that our futures are bright. And the only way that's possible is if we just continue to lean on each other and support each other. But we're here. We're open to any questions and dialogue that you want to have and talk about. And you know, I think for some of you that worked with me before, I'm happy to help you with hotel agreements and contracts. And it's we're all in this together. So thank you for listening.
Steve?
What I heard people say, I mean, you guys are the class of the industry. I mean, from how Robin and Stacy, Michael, Stephanie, what you guys are doing, top notch. And I think I would echo what you said, John. Hey, we're in the hospitality, we're in the travel business, and I'm in the risk management business, not the risk elimination business. When you think about anything you do, there's a degree of risk. Listening to how you guys are managing that and to the degree that it's effective, I would have no problem jumping on a plane, flying to Florida. Robin, you're gonna have to put me up for a while because I'll probably be divorced. Michael, I'll drive to Vegas any day. Stacy, same to Texas. And Stephanie, I may head down to San Diego when I leave here. But no, I think you guys are the top class of the industry. You're doing the right thing the right way. Keep it up. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I forgot to mention one last thing. Sorry. Virtual sites. We partner with PSAV, our in-house AV team. We are open to anybody that can't travel. We've done a tremendous amount of virtual sites. I had 2 this week, sitting from my home and having one of my associates kind of walking through the hotel. So we encourage that. It's very effective. And to mirror most of you guys here, the hotel has never been cleaner. So we certainly want to throw that out there for anybody that isn't able or available to travel. Sorry.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. Thank you to my partners on the call. Thanks to Steve. Thanks for all of you that were able to attend. We did record the session. I would imagine that we will get it out on our social media if you'd like to share it with any of your colleagues. Please follow us on our LinkedIn page, our Facebook page, our Twitter page, our Instagram page, and we'll continue to put more information as it comes out. If you have any questions that maybe we missed, I try to do my best. Please send me an email. Just email me the question. I'll be happy to reach back out to our partners or Steve or whatever resources we have to help you out. So we want to be a resource. We want to be relevant to you. We appreciate you and we appreciate your time. Thank you all and have a great day.
Thanks, John. Thanks, guys.